Straw Hut Media.
Hi, this is John Ross Bowie, and I strongly advise you, don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Hi there, and welcome to Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. I am your host, Clive Owen. No, I'm not Clive Owen. I'm Jake Hogan. We couldn't get Clive Owen to host the show. We tried. It would be so much better. So many more people would watch Don't Be Alone with Clive Owen. Anyway, we're here to talk today with the really talented actor and writer and intellectual and comedian and all-around funny guy, John Ross Bowie. And you'll know him from The Speechless. You probably know him from The Big Bang Theory, where he played the comic book store owner. You know him from a lot of things, but he also wrote this really great play I just saw called Brushstroke. But what he's here to discuss, because this show, as you know, is about me and my problems. It's about how I have many problems, and I invite fascinating, interesting people to talk about my problems. This will be about fandom, how to approach being a fan and what to do with your fandomness, and whether it should be a cult, like you just worship the artist, or you just take from them things and to enrich your own life, and how do we adjust that? And then the instinct to try and meet these people when they say don't ever meet your heroes, it's probably mostly true, but I've had some good experiences meeting people. So what to do with all that? We're going to have that discussion. And you out there, of course, are desperately fans of Jake Hogan, as you should be. So I'm going to ask you to subscribe to Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. I need a certain amount of subscribers in order to pay the rent around here. The subscriber base right now we're at 5 subscribers? 5 subscribers. We need at least 6 or 7 to make this thing work. So there's a button that should be on your screen, just below me somewhere. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, subscribe. What's the harm in getting a new episode every week of this great show? And you don't have to listen to every time it comes. I subscribe to a lot of podcasts I never hear. Why can't I be one of those? Let me be the podcast you never listen to, but you subscribe to. That's my only dream. All right. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, please send them to dbawjk@gmail.com. And we will be right back with John Ross Bowie.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
I really did enjoy Brushstrokes.
Oh, singular, Brushstroke.
A Brushstroke. Oh, I saw Brushstrokes.
Oh, shit. Oh, I hear it's great.
Fantastic.
I hear good things.
Super funny.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. It was so funny. That wasn't yours? Oh,
yeah, no.
So zany farce?
Yeah, no. All the door slamming and the bodice ripping.
Okay.
No, I apologize.
Okay.
I hear great things, however, though. Yeah, it was a branding problem.
Yeah,
we should look into it.
We really should.
I fucked up, too, and back in 99 when I released a film called Titanics.
Yes.
Yeah, that was ill-advised.
You really should check
That was
these things out.
ill-advised.
But it was really, that was great.
It's a fun ride.
Fantastic. And so, like, I just thought it was interesting that your areas of interest are widespread
I guess so, yeah.
interesting and sort of like, and run the gamut.
I have a few different things that really spark my curiosity, and it turns out Cold War history is one of them.
Okay.
And or in this case, Cold War sort of alternate history. Since the central idea of Brushstroke is true, the premise that the CIA was funding abstract expressionist art is a real thing that was happening to make America look like a really open society on the world stage and sort of gain back some soft power that was lost during the blacklist. Totally, yeah, and it's been seamless ever since.
Has any CIA plan like that ever worked?
The CIA has more failures than successes on it.
We'll topple this government and then install this guy, and it'll be great for us.
Yeah,
and then not so
much. But even that doesn't work long term.
Right.
And you read about the CIA, and it will actually cure you of being a conspiracy theorist because the level of incompetence is like, for all the things they tried to do, Fidel Castro died of old age, surrounded by his loved ones. We should all be so lucky.
Right.
So it is remarkable. The book that triggered this whole thing is a book, I can't remember the author's name, about the CIA called Legacy of Ashes.
Okay.
Which is a pretty melodramatic title, but also fairly accurate. I mean, they have fucked up pretty much everything they've touched, you know?
Sure.
And even when things, quote unquote, work for a while, they don't work long term. Right. Like Persia/Iran being a great example. And it's just astonishing how many big swings turned into big misses. And the whole thing with them trying to win back the NCL, the non-communist left, as they called them, was, it's hard to measure something like that. You know, maybe we would have been, you know, really split by a civil war had they not sent an exhibit of Jackson Pollock around the world.
Probably not.
Hard to measure something like, what are the benchmarks for success there, you know? Right. But yeah, it's a pretty fascinating story.
You mentioned conspiracy theories. That is exactly has been my feeling forever, which is the world is too stupid. Right. Honestly, that incompetence is a much bigger problem than conspiracy theories.
A bunch of brilliant men behind the scenes pulling the strings. Oh God, yes.
And I think people who believe in conspiracy theories take comfort in the thought that there is a plan. There's, even if, as angry as they get, that there's a plan of people and things that can happen that could make the world make sense and be sane instead of it's just a big mess.
There's an astonishing overlap of people who are profoundly religious and also believe in conspiracy theories because they need some sort of higher power, be it the God of their understanding or the Illuminati, to be in charge, because otherwise we're just spinning randomly, and that's not a particularly great feeling.
Let me officially introduce you.
Yeah, we just hit the ground running, didn't we? Yeah.
You are John Ross Bowie.
That's me.
You're a great actor. Been on many fabulous movies and TV shows, but you're also
some terrible ones too. In all fairness, I've also done some crap. Yeah.
Which one is the shittiest?
Oh, here's a way to kick somebody who's down. I'm not actually going to name the show, but I got fired off a UPN sitcom one time, which is I got fired from a UPN pilot, which is a real old timey phrase.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Because I was using my butter churn and my cotton gin.
Wow. Okay. But I mean, but you were nobody likes to get fired, but
no.
It was shitty enough that you went there.
It was shitty enough that I was able to kind of roll with it. I'm like, well, I mean, look, maybe I'm not enough of a hack to do. The writing was really not very good at all. I swear to God. You know what's crazy? This town is so small that I'm actually friends with the guy who replaced me.
Okay.
Like we have no bad blood. It's lovely.
Great.
Yeah,
sure.
It's lovely.
That's a lovely thing. That's great. I've replaced people, showrunners and people.
Oh, right.
And I've called the person who was fired, and before I took the job, and said, "Are you okay with this?"
That's very classy.
You need to be well. I find that friendships last longer than TV
executives.
shows.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
And so like you sort of have to figure it out and say, are you all right with this and how's it going?
Bridges are going to get burned. It's a question of which one.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So we'd figure it. Now, the state of my career is such that I'm doing podcasts. I would not make that phone call today.
No,
I need the job.
No, yeah, by all means.
I absolutely
Ditto.
need the gig.
Same.
But I was going to say that you're very talented in terms of your acting abilities, but you're also a writer. Now, who would have guessed? We like to categorize people into singular categories. And here you're a writer, you're a playwright, you've done this Brushstroke thing, but you also wrote a really cool play about the Ramones.
I did,
not long ago.
Yeah.
Now, that's the reason you're here.
Okay.
So this show is about Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. Is about me and my problems. And I have really smart, funny people on to talk about my problems.
Okay.
And one of my many, many problems is about fandom.
Okay.
And you seem to have conquered fandom pretty damn well.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know that I have an approach to it, and I have a lot of thoughts on the matter, but conquered, I mean, do we ever conquer something like that? Now, do you say you have a problem with fandom because you're rooting for a long defunct baseball team? Is that what's setting you off? Or
well, I am in fact rooting for the Dodgers, and they have been defunct for many years. Now they have just like people are just throwing money at the Dodgers and they still can't win. So I don't know.
I'm a Mets fan and I'm right there with you in terms of like massive payroll with nothing to show for it. But much like the CIA, actually.
Exactly. But no, I mean, I feel as though, and I could be wrong, that you turned a love of the Ramones into something special. Like an interesting view of that time, that era, that place. I mean, you also you're kind of a big picture guy. So you take a thing and you expand on it.
I try to.
But, well, you do. Which is great. I'm a small picture guy. I can only do the minutia.
I disagree.
They call me in for the minutia.
Old minutia Kogan.
No, but here's my thing. Like Elliot Gould I met recently because I said on Twitter, I don't know about anything else in my life, but I know this, that when I die, Elliot Gould will speak at my funeral. I just wrote that because
amazing.
That's the one thing that I knew probably would never, ever happen. And then Elliot Gould called me.
Called you?
Called me. Found my number and called me and said, what do you want me to say? And then I had lunch with Elliot Gould.
Shut up.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Here's the problem, and this is not great news.
Yeah.
Given the ravages of time, you do need to now predecease Elliot Gould. And we need to actually, if necessary, engineer such a thing.
We talked about it at the lunch. And so I don't know. I mean, we're just going to let things fly.
We're just going to let
things have to happen.
Play them as they lay, as it were.
This goes back to fandom.
Yeah.
My original question, which is, if Elliot Gould wasn't one of the people who I think, God, I got to meet Elliot Gould. I'm thrilled I got to meet Elliot Gould, but he's not like Elvis Costello to me. He's not like I have something in my heart to say about this person, and I want to meet that person and say it to them, and they're not gonna care. Like, that's the problem with the fandom part.
Oh, okay.
They're not going to care. I experience it on the other side a little bit when people talk about The Simpsons and whatever.
Right.
I love The Simpsons, and I'm very happy to hear people that love The Simpsons, but they're trying to express to me something which they need to express, which is, it means a lot to me.
Right.
And all I can do is say, I'm glad. I mean, I don't have the other thing that I want to have with Elvis Costello is, your music is incredible. You mean a lot to me. Your reference base of music that you built your music on now means an enormous amount to me.
Oh, interesting.
And you changed my perspective on art and music and everything. And I want to have a month-long conversation with you about art. That's really what I want from Elvis Costello. And instead, what I've had with Elvis Costello, I've been lucky enough to meet him on several times, is that other conversation of, your music's really great. Thank you. Anyway, thank you.
Do you find it harder to fanboy in front of musicians than you do actors and writers? Is there a mystique surrounding musicians? Because with actors and writers, you can see the strings a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you've done both of those jobs.
Yeah.
And you can look at it and be like, I know the gist of what you do.
Movie stars glow, though. Movie stars
do glow. Yeah,
they have a magic about them because they've been in movies and they're stars, and there's something otherworldly a little bit about them. Even the nicest ones, there's still something like, I know George Clooney a little bit. He's still like, it's George Clooney.
Yeah,
there's
sure.
a feeling of hanging out with George Clooney. I'm hanging out with George Clooney, despite the fact that he's grounded and down to earth, and it's all about,
famously so. Yeah.
It's all me and my
projection,
and all this, and it's not him, but
right.
That's just how it is.
Right.
But yes, musicians, great musicians that have meant something to me, and I play a little music, but I'm not that. But it's not just it's political figures, it's artists, it's people who have scientists, people who have changed the world. If I ever get a chance to meet or would meet them, I would love to know what to do with this feeling. Like what made you write the play about the Ramones? So
the Ramones were these four weird geeks from Queens, which is my native borough as well. I only lived there for like the first 3 years of my life, but it's my parents met in Queens.
Yeah. I'm from Brooklyn in the same way.
Okay. And I moved back to Queens for my last couple of years in New York because it was the last sort of cheap but convenient place. Queens is the home of not just the Ramones, but a lot
Trump.
Okay. God damn it.
Sorry.
No, I'm leaving.
Yeah, sorry.
That's what's so frustrating is that, yes, he's always going to be, he's eclipsed Run DMC and Ramones and Tribe Called Quest and Christopher Walken and all these incredible things that came out of Queens.
Right.
They introduced the Ford Mustang at the '64 World's Fair, which is where my parents met. They were both docents at the Ford Pavilion.
Right.
So there's something instantly underdogish about Spider-Man's from Queens.
Yes, sure. Okay.
The Ramones covered the old cartoon theme song at one point, actually,
Right.
and it was a wonderful Queens in-joke. So there's something about a band from Queens, not from Manhattan, not from Brooklyn, from Queens, the sort of underdog borough. And they came along at a time. Their first gig is August 1974 at CBGB, which at the time, was still clinging to the idea that they were going to be country, bluegrass,
Right.
and blues, but that was not working out. And they were looking at the landscape of popular music, of like the singer-songwriter era, and then all the prog rock that was filling stadiums, your early ELP, a lot of Yes and Genesis and all that very, very theatrical 8-minute song stuff. And were both out of necessity because they were limited musicians, but also out of a real aesthetic vision, they were fighting against that. Now, our songs are going to be 2 minutes long. That first album is 14 songs in 28 minutes.
Right.
And I bought that cassette at the Tower Records near Lincoln Center and never looked back. There was something so simplistic and wonderful and fun and a sort of smart dumb to the way they approached music.
What age were you?
That would have been 13.
The ability to sort of analyze the smart dumbness of it.
I don't know that I was able to articulate it at the time.
Instead of just like, there's energy here. And
No,
this
there
is
was
crazy.
definitely, that's probably what got me initially. And then, the second song on the record is called Beat on the Brat, the lyrics of which are beat on the brat, beat on the brat, beat on the brat with a baseball bat, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And it seems to acknowledge its silliness in a way that that a lot of it had this great mix of like horror movie imagery and but also this very 60s girl group sensibility, and you could hear that these were guys who had started writing songs and playing instruments and formed a band before they really knew what they were doing.
Right.
And I have taken that aesthetic through my life. I'm like, I'm going to lurch, I'm going to get headshots before I've actually taken a scene study class,
That's
just
that's-
a lot of really, which is an obnoxious thing
Yeah.
to do in hindsight, but that's what punk rock taught me to do. Punk rock taught me to just do it yourself, get out there, learn as you go.
That is fantastic. I made the mistake of like warming up. I took 15 years to warm up to do a podcast. I slowly got into it and then, practiced with a microphone, a pretend microphone for a couple of years.
Sure.
And then I finally did a real podcast just in 2024.
You just used like a whisk or something?
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I may have waited too long. I'm just going to say.
No.
long.
It's a growth industry.
But if I was more like the Ramones, I would have jumped in early and just and gotten there a little bit ahead of the other guys.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
The other thing that was interesting about the Ramones is that they were local heroes. You would see them walking around the streets sometimes. And when I'd already been a fan for a couple of years, I saw Joey on the street and just stopped him and gushed at him. And he was 6'7", something. And I don't even think I had reached my full imposing height of 5'8" yet.
Right.
And he famously had a very, very severe case of OCD, so he would not shake your hand. But he was so gracious and kind, and I was just a bubbling idiot in front of the guy.
Okay. And what was that exchange for you like?
For me, it was still wonderful because
Right.
I had shared his air for a moment.
Right.
He was such an odd-looking guy,
Yeah.
and he's a guy, and this is actually in the play, he's a guy who, if he's not a rock star, what does this guy do?
Right.
But
That could be said of everybody who's in the entertainment business.
No, yeah, certainly. But really, I worked in corporate America for a little while because I passed.
Yeah.
You look at me and
What'd
you're
you
like,
do in corporate America?
oh my God, I temped all over the place. And then I finally, my last gig was writing brochures for the marketing department of an enormous professional consulting firm who I won't name.
Okay.
Because I talk a lot of shit about them.
Wow.
But you've heard of them.
All right.
And I did all sorts of office day jobs because I thought that's what being an adult was.
Right.
And ignoring the fact that that was my father's version of adult, and he was a miserable drunk. So,
Okay.
But so there's just something so their whole complete aesthetic of like, we're four guys, we're all going to take the same last name, we're all going to dress the same, and this unified, like, if you want to be dismissive, you can call it a shtick. I prefer aesthetic, vision, brand, but okay, shtick. This approach to music being just short, fun, snappy, and what really made me write the play about them was that they then worked with the most famously laborious and intense and crazy producer, Phil Spector, who produced their fifth album, End of the Century, which a lot of people, it's a controversial record because it's a Ramones record that sounds like it was produced by Phil Spector. Like the guitars are enormous. There's layers and layers of guitar. The drums sound like they're in most of the Ramones albums. The drums sound like, oh, there's a drummer in the room. This sounds like there's, a drummer coming from the heavens down upon you. Yeah. There's like gongs and timpanis and shit. And so that contrast of those two work ethics of like a band that was used to recording an album in 2 weeks versus a producer who was used to taking months, I thought was fascinating. Plus there was all this, in modern parlance, the Ramones became such a toxic workplace, and I loved the idea of these guys being in a toxic workplace, but still working together for 20 plus years, because this was their job. Right.
So, but all of that goes into being a fan, like the depth to which their music, their aesthetic, their branding, as it were. Yeah. The individual Ramones. You probably know their real names. Yeah. And what they might look like without the wigs.
Yeah. Here and there. Well, actually, a lot of that was their real hair. Johnny had to wear a wig for his last couple of years because he lost his hair during the prostate cancer treatments. But that was Joey's hair.
Okay.
So that was Joey's hair. He dyed it, but that was his hair.
Right. But I mean, it goes to a depth of their meaning. They have meaning to you.
They have a great deal of meaning to me. You
wouldn't have done that if it didn't have meaning to you. And Phil Spector's the cherry on top of that meaning, because I bet he also has some meaning to you. Yeah. In how, what it's like to be a creative person who's like a mad genius insisting upon something, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it really doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I have yet to kill a starlet in my Alhambra home. Right. But, I'm young.
You're young. You can get there.
Plenty of time.
You can get there.
I don't need to make light of that. But
yes,
yeah,
you do.
I do. I 100%
yes, it's
do.
ridiculous. I feel bad for her, but it's so stupid. At the same time, that guy in that crazy stupid wig in Alhambra. Yeah. There's a lot of wrong decisions that have to go down for that to happen.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. And I very much remember when that happened, when the killing of Lana Clarkson happened, there was a real sense of like, Phil Spector just killed someone for the first time now?
Right. Like, he's been threatening with that gun for the last 40 years.
He's been waving that fucking thing around forever. This is the 21st century. He's just now killed someone. But and I think what you can also hear is that there is my fandom for the Ramones is not unconditional. It's not like, oh God, you can do no wrong. Right. There's, I have critical thoughts. I have thoughts about what the guitarists sound like on each album, because they hopped around from producer to producer. But that's
the difference between being a fan and being a cultist.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, Elvis Costello has made some shitty songs, and he doesn't always have to wear that dumb hat. But it's but he's done enough great things and continues to do enough great things.
I just saw him a couple years ago. Great show.
There was a magazine like Mojo or something that put out the 500 songs Elvis Costello. Sure, yeah. And I, of course, bought that issue and started listening to all 500 songs. Yeah. And he is a super fan. That's the other thing about Elvis Costello.
He is a fan.
He's a super fan. So,
and ditto, the Ramones are fans of what they were fans of. A friend of mine, Jason Narducci, tells a wonderful story about being at a record signing where Pete Townsend was signing records, and Joey Ramone, 6'6", was in line to get his record signed by Pete Townsend.
Fantastic.
Probably could have gone through back channels, but was in line at a record store to get his record signed by Pete Townsend, because he was a massive Who fan. He was obviously a massive girl group fan. Mm-hmm. You can hear Ronnie Spector in his vocals a lot of the time, which is why it's such another kind of interesting dynamic that Phil's like, here, you weird guy. You
Right.
sound like my ex-wife.
Right.
Get in here. Sing for me.
If you're going to sing, then we'll do it this way.
And that's exactly how it went down. And there's something vaguely Phantom of the Opera about that whole thing, you know, and and it's fascinating.
Who's the most idyllic actor, artist, that person that you've met in your career? And then is there anyone you've been stunned by or cowed by or been nervous?
I mean, there's a few. I've been really fortunate. What pops to the front of my mind, a few years ago I was on a TV show, Speechless for ABC.
Mm-hmm.
That was my longest running gig.
Yep.
Not my longest running gig, but the gig of which I did the most episodes,
Mm-hmm.
because I was a series regular on
Right.
something that lasted. And John Cleese played my father-in-law.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Played Minnie Driver's dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a bunch of scenes with John Cleese, and it was that was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Because I am very much of that generation that had its head sort of shaped by Python.
Of course.
Watching it on, it was an interesting class thing about Python too, because Python was on PBS, so you didn't even need cable to get Python.
Right.
You
Right.
didn't even, we had cable. It seemed to me like we had cable later than any of my friends. For whatever, my friends had that box on top
Right.
of their TV long before I did. And, but I had PBS, which means I had a bunch of weird stuff on great performances, but I also had Python.
Right.
And then we would also, it was in New York, so we had all those great repertory houses like the Thalia and the Thalia Soho and the Regency and all those places where you could go watch like a double feature of Holy Grail and Life of Brian.
Mm-hmm.
So he is a seismic
Yeah.
influence.
Now, people who have met and worked with Cleese have two different experiences.
I know.
One is he was a real jerk to them, and the other one, he's kind of a jerk to them. So
I caught him on a good day,
Okay.
and then by the way, when they wrapped me, I go in the next day and they're like, "Oh, we kept Cleese too long yesterday."
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
we
yeah.
kept Cleese too long
Right.
yesterday. We had Cleese around here a little
Right.
too long, and he was starting to let us know that he had been here too long.
Right.
So I caught him on his best possible fucking
Fantastic.
behavior. I also got to say, I made him laugh at one
Yeah.
point. Which, come on.
I would take an angry John Cleese just to meet him. I have no problem with it. And the thing I would say to him is the thing that would make him really angry, which is, I'm such a fan of Monty Python. I'm such a fan of that thing you did 1,000 years ago that ignores all your other work.
I didn't. I
Yeah.
was so,
Right.
I can't believe I managed to hold it together. But and he's also weird about it because he'll also drop it in to, not that, but at one point he referred to something that had happened on that hotel show. And we're like, Faulty Towers.
Right.
You're talking about Faulty Towers, that hotel show. Got it. Okay, cool.
It's the kind of thing, it's the kind of stuff where he gets to talk
He
about
gets
it, but
to,
you
he gets to bring it up. You
Yeah,
don't get to bring
right,
it up,
exactly.
which is a boundary I will respect.
Sure.
Fine. But he, I caught him on a really, really good day, and I was really fortunate. Really early on in my career, I worked with Diane Keaton for one day,
The best.
and that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And
She tickled me.
she what?
She tickled me.
Oh my God.
She tickled me.
Oh
She was
my
at a party and she came behind me and tickled me. And I turned around, it's Diane Keaton. She didn't know me. She just said, "What are the boys talking about?" And she tickled me. She tickled me. Diane Keaton tickled me.
I'd have ejaculated.
And
I'm sorry.
I'm not saying I didn't.
Okay.
I'm not saying I didn't.
That'd have been
And I turned around. It was Diane Keaton, and I said, and I tried to enlist her, bring her into the circle, but then she walked away.
I did a movie with her called Because I Said So, and we were talking between takes, and I asked her if she still had a place in New York, and she said, "I did for a while, but I lost it." And it sounded just like the moment where Annie Hall goes, and he had died when he's talking about her grandfather
Right.
in the or uncle or whatever in the bank, and I had an out of body experience.
Yeah.
You know, this moment of her like talking just like Annie Hall in front of me.
Right. See, that's the kind of thing. Like, she's not just somebody who I'm a fan of, which I am a fan of, but she has a life force that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I just, that to
Well
me,
put.
I could have her sit there and just talk to her about that life force and not about Mr. Goodbar or whatever else. Like, I can talk to her about her life now and
Yeah.
not just fan out, you know, and that's That's interesting.
Well, she has, she's a photographer and she's a mental health advocate, and she has a bunch of different things going on, which make her continuously fascinating and relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
And adorable.
Oh, adorable.
And adorable.
Oh my God, the cutest.
And do take deep dives into artists that interest you.
Well, yeah, I'm. You mentioned earlier, you rather in your very flattering introduction of me, you mentioned my broad array of tastes and interests and endeavors. I'm always drawn to those guys who are doing a bunch of things. I look up to Wallace Shawn, which isn't easy. He's 5'4", but you look at that guy
That's
who
such a
is
shitty joke, and I enjoyed it.
I know,
I really loved it.
I couldn't help
mad
myself.
at myself for laughing.
I couldn't help. I thought you were mad at yourself. I made the joke. I feel awful.
No,
I'm burning inside. My shame is tangible.
Is correct. Making the joke is the right thing to do. Laughing at it was the shame. All right, that's all.
Wallace Shawn is in the 90s, he is going back and forth from Vanya on 42nd Street to Clueless to the dinosaur in Toy Story to writing The Designated Mourner and working on a new translation of Three Penny Opera. And I look at a guy like that and go, that's the business.
Right.
That is the fucking business right there. That's what you should be doing.
Right.
Is doing and it's not even I'll do one for them and one for me.
Right.
It's no, you should find joy in all of that stuff. Get in there and fucking kill it in Clueless. Get in there and fucking kill it in Princess Bride. Get in there and fucking kill it in maybe the best Chekhov adaptation that's ever been put on film. Mm-hmm.
But that sounds so exhausting.
It is, and I'm tired all the time. And it's rainy today. You have no idea how hard it was to get here.
Oh, I do.
I'm fucking cashed.
Yeah, I understand.
This has a shot in it. This isn't just a nice coffee. This has a fucking shot of espresso in it, and I'm doing everything I can. It is exhausting.
Yeah.
But I also don't know what else to do with myself.
Well, I mean, it's great that you have the other thing. Most actors I know don't have that. They wait. They go to rehearsal, or they go to acting class, or they do things. They occupy themselves, but they don't have these other things that can really occupy their time and actually become other things. And that's.
I mean, I don't make a ton of money as a playwright. I don't even think I'm going to pay taxes
unusual.
as a playwright.
That's really unusual.
Shut up, don't be an asshole.
Every other playwright I know is
this
just
is
so
bullying. Is
rich.
what this is. This is bullying.
Yeah, I don't know.
But you are given this sense as an actor. You end up waiting a lot. Yeah. You end up waiting for somebody else to make a decision about your life.
Right.
And that is also exhausting in a different way.
Yeah.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Should I be delving deep, as you do sometimes, with more art and more artists, and then throwing it away? And just letting it seep into me, and just taking with me the things I've learned, and disregard the artist completely?
I think there's time for both. I think there's time to really dive in and put the Ramones in a larger historical context, and in a larger spiritual context, which the play does, without giving too much away. And I think there's also time to just put "I Want to Be Sedated" on in the car and just enjoy that for what it is, all four chords of it.
Right, but I mean the history of the Ramones and who they were and what made them great. That information goes into the big bank of creativity that you have.
Uh-huh.
And you don't have to then concern yourself with that anymore. It can be used. Now it's about what is your life, and what is your creativity, and what other things you bring to it, and what are you giving your kids, and telling them about music, and telling them about what it is to grow, and weird combinations of the wall of sound and punk rock and
yeah.
I
think you are once again making that wonderful distinction between being a fan and being a cultist.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to grow with the band, allow yourself to necessarily grow away from the band. It's a child. You love it unconditionally, but you are allowed to criticize it. and you are allowed to let it cross the street by itself after a point.
I feel uncomfortable. I think there is a cult of Elvis Costello. And there is a cult of Bruce Springsteen. And when I go to the Wiltern Theater and see Eddie Gordetsky and all these other, the same faces at every concert, I start to think, oh, this is Scientology. I'm not saying that he's not a great artist still. What I'm saying is there's a weird thing where you're in the middle of an arena and all the Springsteen fans are around you and they're all your age. And they're all singing Born to Run, which nobody's there is running away from anything. The bones may be ripping from their back, but it's not for the same reason.
Well, he himself, did you watch or did you see the Broadway thing where he talks about the fact that he lives 20 minutes from where he grew up?
Absolutely.
So he is acknowledging that. And I think as long as you know that fact about Bruce Springsteen, you're not in a cult.
I guess so. But it does feel weird to relive that fantasy of that song.
Yeah.
In my era, in my age now. And think about that as like, as anything more than nostalgia.
We have to get out while we're young.
Yes.
But failing that.
Right. All right. Well, you haven't really helped me at all, John. Not about any of this. No. But we're going to move on because...
Good conversation regardless, though.
Yeah, no, it is. I knew you'd be a great conversation. We have listener mail. And I ask a question brought in by a listener. And first there's the theme.
Now it's time for... Listener mail.
That's great.
I love that. That's
got
beautiful.
The Andrews sisters to reunite for that.
It's true. Only Maxine. Patty and Laverne dead.
Wow.
Yeah. No. That was my son. That was my son, Charlie Cogan, the great Charlie Cogan.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great.
The listener mail is: what is the biggest mistake you've made that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to you?
That's really interesting. Wow, that's a great question. Yeah.
Mine is killing JFK.
Yeah, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, that brought us, the Civil Rights Act with LBJ.
No, I'm saying.
It turned out well. It worked out fine. No, that was a good move.
At the time, I was listening too much to the Cubans.
No, I'm sure you had your doubts, but I think at the end, that was a net win.
Yes, exactly right.
Certainly,
exactly right.
Certainly.
Yeah.
You know what? When we we bought a house in 2006, right before we had our first kid. Mm-hmm. We had the last writer's strike, not this one, but the one before that, and the housing market crashed.
Right.
And that was a terrifying feeling.
Right.
And we had to eventually get out of that house, and we managed to get out. And we were also like, God, if we sell this house, is this going to be a mistake?
Right.
Is this going to be a mistake to sell this house? We got away with... The neighborhood had appreciated just enough that we didn't have to short our house, and we got out. But we were, we've always sort of been like, oh fuck, should we have stayed there? Should we have stayed there? Should we have stayed there? But once we got out of that house, we had this incredible sense of relief, and we stopped going into auditions with this sense of like, please help me keep my house. Right. And I had a flurry of great bookings around there because I was less plagued with anxiety.
Let's talk about the freedom of escaping expectations. Because that's what you just said.
Yeah.
So you and Jamie need to have a house and need to own a house. And that idea, which isn't a wrong idea necessarily, because there's a good equity and people have made a lot of money buying houses. But that expectation and that idea could built a prison for you a little bit.
It did. Yeah. Both literal and figurative. Yeah. There was a real sense of like, oh, I live inside my debt. I live inside my weird decisions,
What's wrong with, nothing's wrong with discarding expectations and going with the feeling of freedom of, okay, I don't have that equity or future, but in this present, I can breathe.
That we have a lot of different other freedoms that we are afforded by not owning. Also, we are from New York. Right. We know plenty of people who don't own.
Right.
We know people who rent till the day they die, and we can talk about the ethics of that. But that's, I have a landlord who has to look in the mirror. But me, I'm just trying to buy some space where I can put my stuff. You know, month to month. I think there is a. It's part of that winner take all part of the American dream that I don't think is entirely fair or practical.
Right, and there's a thing about expectation. Other people look at you. Is this person a success if they have own their house in a particular neighborhood or drive a certain car or all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a large part of me that leans into that. And I've spent the last 30 years trying to escape it. Including the prisons I built myself, like collecting things, collections, and like saying, okay, I'm going to own every Daredevil comic book, and I'm going to own every. I had an enormous album collection, and then enormous CD collection. What museum am I building to myself where I'm going to leave these great treasures to who? And it's really this really strange thing that a prison I built myself.
We have to examine our relationship with stuff.
Yeah, we don't need stuff. We don't need as much space as we think we need, and we don't need as much stuff as we think we need. And could you just explain that to my wife?
Happy to.
Seriously.
Happy to.
She's now, we're looking to buy yet another house.
Oh, really?
And I'm looking not to.
Okay.
And it's one of those things where it's
so the podcast is going well, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
clearly.
yeah. We're using all the podcast money and going right into that house.
Fantastic.
Is there, Ryan, are we making a lot of money on the podcast?
Not yet.
Okay. Not yet. But any day now?
That's the first thing he said was not yet.
Yeah,
it's like that moment, like the one guy who speaks in silent movie is Marcel Marceau. That was what that moment was just now.
What? And I'm still paying $5,000 an episode to you?
That's weird. That's weird.
Is that weird?
That is weird. Yeah.
All right,
That's
he says there are costs.
Lawyer up. Lawyer up.
All right. I don't know. All right. And the last bit that we do in the show is that you have a moment of joy.
A moment of joy.
What's going to lift you up?
My kids are 16 and 14 now.
Right.
And those are on a number of fronts very challenging ages for a parent.
Right.
But they're also in that very fun area where they are now starting to recommend movies and records and things to me. And that's incredibly exciting. And that is something I find a great deal of joy in.
What's the most recent recommendation from your 14 or 16?
My daughter recommended a film that I probably was going to see anyway, but she really mandated it, called Theater Camp with Ben Platt and Molly Gordon, which was terrific.
Yeah, it was good.
And really, really sweet. Yeah. A breath of fresh air in the occasionally exhausted mockumentary genre.
Yeah. Go in with low expectations.
Yeah.
You got to go in. It's a very cheap little movie. Go in with low expectations and you'll enjoy it. If you go in with big, heavy expectations, you're not going to enjoy
it. But it was a nice, slight 90-minute diversion. Right. And then my son got me into a musical artist called a TV Girl, which is doing sort of retro French pop stuff that was really interesting.
Is being a dad, like, was that ever a dream or just?
It was, but it's been both harder and more wonderful than I expected, which I guess is sort of a cliche answer, but it really is true. I mean, there's stuff where I'm like, Jesus Christ, nobody prepared me for this nonsense. Right. But there's also just so much coolness that comes with it too.
I have this problem, which is I want to be buddies with my son, and I can't be a buddy with him.
No, that is a line you have to walk. Yeah. But there's a way to be you're a dad he can talk to.
Yeah, we haven't reached that yet.
Okay,
but he's only 23. Maybe at some point he'll talk to me.
You'll get there.
Yeah, no.
He's doing work for you though. You've got him in the Kogan sweatshop.
I do. And
writing your jingles.
That was for free.
Phenomenal.
Not paid.
Phenomenal.
Yes, not paid, because everything apparently in podcasting is for free.
Mm-hmm. That was my experience.
I told him it's just for free.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you for being here.
Jay, this was a real honor. This
fantastic. It was a real honor. I'm glad you recognized the honor involved.
100%.
I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank our audience for tuning in. The 4 Elvis Costello fans who tune in every week. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Hi, guys.
If you have any comments or questions, please write into dbawjk@gmail.com. That's Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan, right? dbawjk@gmail.com. And tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. You can tell me what I'm doing right. Nobody does, but you could. But certainly tell me what I'm doing wrong, and I'll do it better. One of the things was...
You'll do the wrong thing better?
Yeah. So please introduce your guest more. So John Ross Bowie.
How are you?
I just introduced him again. I read an email that
appreciate that.
I should be introducing guests more. And commercial placement. Commercial placement's weird. But
Oh,
we'll
okay.
we'll figure that out. Anyway, thank you very much for being here, and I want everybody to go out and share something with people. That's the whole thing. Don't be alone. Share something cool with somebody else just for the sake of doing it. Thank you, and we'll see you next time, maybe.
Don't be alone.